What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at transfer tips ahead of Game Week 8. So we're going to look at the market, see who's being bought, who's being sold, whether people are making a mistake, whether you could hold off on your transfer. Going to talk about wildcards and stuff in this one as well. So if you enjoy it, please do give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. So I think similar to last week's transfer tips video, we have to take into account that there are quite a few wildcards being played this week. At least when you look at like YouTube and on Twitter, a lot of people have used the wildcard this week. I think if they don't, it's probably going to be a few in Game Week 9, then a few people are just going to wait until whenever they need it. So this is probably the last time we're going to get a mass playing of wildcards, I would say, and therefore Ronaldo is not part of the plans. And I've said this for ages, right? If you've watched the videos all season, this isn't going to come as a shock to you. I fully think we can get rid of Ronaldo for this run, right? Leicester, Liverpool, Spurs, Man City, Chelsea as a group of fixtures over 6 game weeks is really tough. The only good one there really is Watford away. Now, if you're on a wildcard, yeah, I would absolutely get rid of him. I wouldn't have 3 premiums. I've said that right since the start. I haven't changed my opinion. I've seen nothing to tell me that 3 premiums is the best strategy to go for. If you're happy with the rest of your team, fair enough, but I don't think it's the way to go. I think you can spread that money better around your team, and not having Ronaldo is fine. Obviously, Game Week 12 is going to be an interesting one. I don't really want to think about that right now, but it is something to consider in that game week. We know that in Game Week 12, that's when Spurs have a really good run of fixtures. So Spurs play Leeds at home. So possibly you could just go for Harry Kane or Son instead that week instead of Ronaldo. We'll have to see what the situation is closer to the time. You don't want to decide in Game Week 12, but you probably don't also want to decide going into Game Week 8 just yet. So this is a bad run of fixtures. You can get rid of him on a wild card. For those of you that aren't on a wild card, right, I don't necessarily... The big thing people are doing is switching Ronaldo to Lukaku, which is fine. I've done it myself. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But for captaincy this week, you're probably not going to captain Ronaldo or Lukaku for most people anyway. It's going to be Salah against Watford. So whether you have Ronaldo against Leicester or Lukaku against Brentford, it probably doesn't matter all that much. I can't see Cristiano Ronaldo being benched again for this fixture. And although I've got it down as a pink fixture, so it's fairly difficult. It's not quite Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea levels, but it's not easy either based on kind of stats from last year. So far, Leicester haven't been that great. Now, I don't want to just change the colour based on a few game weeks, but they are missing a few key defenders. Obviously, Fofana got the really bad injury. Johnny Evans hasn't been back yet. He might be back for Game Week 8. We'll have to wait and see. But they've not been good at the back, right? So I'm looking at expected goals conceded, and they are I think it's 8th worst team so far in the league, just a little bit better than Spurs. Like, their expected goals conceded per game so far is 1.43. To put that in perspective, Watford is 1.44, and Watford is definitely a defence that we would target. So that doesn't mean that I think we should rush out to buy Man United players because they're playing Leicester and this is some easy game now, because it won't be. I'm sure Brendan Rodgers will have a plan. I'm sure Leicester will make it difficult for United, but just like how Man United's defence has been leaking goals, so is Leicester's, and to a worse extent, the stats back it up as well. For Man United, the defence is looking a little bit better, and we're going to come on to Jamie Vardy in a minute, who's playing Man United. But if I've got Ronaldo this week and I've got a different transfer I could make, like a higher priority transfer, I wouldn't be panicking about owning him. You can hold him one more week and then look to swap him for Lukaku, because Lukaku's got Norwich in Game Week 9 and Ronaldo's got Liverpool, followed by Spurs, followed by Man City. It's a tough fixture run. He's not fixture proof, like I've said before. So if you're on a wild card, absolutely get rid. If you're not, you could still make the transfer, but I don't think it's a priority this week, and keeping him for Leicester away is perfectly fine. Okay, so same match as Cristiano Ronaldo, but obviously opposite team, and players aren't taking out Jamie Vardy, they're bringing him in. 91,000 managers already brought him in. I'm sure that will go up as we get closer to the deadline as well. And a few people have said over the last few weeks, like, are we sleeping on Jamie Vardy? Why are we ignoring him? And I've kind of said a few times now, I don't think he's a bad option at all if you can fit him in. But for a lot of people's squads, when you've got Lukaku, when you've got Ronaldo, when you've got Salah, maybe you've got Trent, a few other expensive defenders, it gets very difficult to fit Vardy in, even with all these cheap midfielders as well. And I feel like people are starting to move to not going for too many kind of 5.5 million-ish midfielders, maybe having like one, like an Everton one, Gallagher or Mbeumo, someone like that. So it is hard to fit him in. There's two questions really. Is one, should we have him anyway for this fixture run? I think it's okay. I think Brentford, Leeds and Watford are good fixtures. The 3 outside of that are not that great. It doesn't mean he can't score. Then the other question is, if you're going to bring him in, should you bring him in against Man United? Now, I know a lot of you have probably owned Luke Shaw. You've seen how poor Man United have been in defence. Like, the stats-wise, they've actually done perfectly okay so far. And I know a lot of people hate that, right? Well, stats don't matter. It's only points, right? I get that. But expected goals conceded, Man United are the 4th best team so far this season. Only Man City, Wolves, Brighton have done better. So that tells me that at some point, all this like panic about them keeping clean sheets, they will keep some soon. The question as always is, it's impossible to predict exactly when that will be, and you definitely don't do it for harder fixtures, right? So Leicester have got a chance here because I think on the counter, Man United have looked poor. A lot of people have talked about this. Everton on the counter looked good, Villa looked good, Wolves should have done better as well when they played Man United, and guess who else can counter against them? It's Jamie Vardy with his pace getting in behind. And there is a chance that Varane and Maguire might miss out, right? We'd have to wait to see what the diagnosis is. I think Varane went off with a knock in the Nations League, and obviously Maguire got injured and didn't play the last game as well. So that will be good news for Leicester too. So I think if you want Jamie Vardy, it's probably not the worst time to bring him in against Man United. I wouldn't usually do it, and I wouldn't actively look to bring him into our team because he's playing Man United. But if you want him for this fixture run, and you're kind of saying to yourself, well, Man United might not be too bad right now, and then as well as Man United, you get Brentford, Leeds and Watford over the next 6, he could be a good buy. I'm still not looking at him at all. Now, I own him in different fantasy football games because they work differently and the points are scored, whatever. And I won't go into the details about it, but I don't think I'm going to own him at any point soon in FPL because the way I'm setting my team up, I just don't know where I find another 3 million for a forward because I don't want to get rid of Lukaku. And I think if you give me the choice, I'm going to stick with the Chelsea man for now. That might change later on. The fixtures might turn for Chelsea and get better or even better than they kind of already look-ish for Leicester. But I'm not going to bring him in. So do I think people are making a mistake? No. Do I think it's a bad time to bring him against Man United? Probably not, especially if Maguire and Varane both miss out. But I still think for 10.5 million, I just don't know if the value's there. It looks really good right now. He's had loads of shots in the box. His points per match are really good. And if he can keep that up, he will be not maybe a bargain, but a good value player for 10.5 million. But for now, I'm still going to hold off. I just think the way our teams are set up, I just think it's difficult to fit him in. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not going to look for a way to do it either. So you're not making a mistake, but I think for a lot of people, it's not going to matter if you don't own him. Rafinha is a really interesting one this week, right? So he's already had 108,000 transfers in. We know what good value is, right? I've been banging on about it all pre-season, all season as well. But there is a chance that he might miss Game Week 8. Some of you are on wildcard, some of you aren't. There's also a chance that he might go up in price this week as well. So the price prediction site fplstatistics.co.uk has been predicting, I think, for the last day or so that he might rise in price. It hasn't happened yet. The reason why it gets tricky over these game weeks, right? I won't go into massive detail, but basically, if I transfer someone in and you transfer someone in as a normal transfer, that counts towards their kind of net transfers in, and then you hit a certain amount and then they go up in price, right? Now, we don't know the exact measurements and stuff like that. The price change sites might have a good idea, but they don't know exactly what makes it happen because obviously FPL don't release that info. But if I'm on a wild card and I bring Rafinha in, that transfer in doesn't count towards the net transfers in for a price rise, right? So although that he's predicted to rise, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be Thursday. It might not happen until Friday or Saturday. But the annoying thing is, no one wants to bring a player in who's going to miss Game Week 8. So we'll take this in 2 different chunks. First of all, at this point in time, I don't know if he's going to miss out. Now, there are some clubs that have said their players are going to miss Game Week 8. So like Alisson and Fabinho, for example. Firmino won't because he didn't travel with Brazil. So there is a chance because the game's so late that Rafinha won't get back in time. But I guess the big difference is for those big clubs is they can almost afford to not have those players. Like, don't get me wrong, Liverpool haven't got an Alisson equivalent, but it's not going to hurt them maybe as much as maybe Rafinha missing Leeds. So I wouldn't completely count out him starting in Game Week 8, but we don't know yet, and there is a high chance that it doesn't happen. So we have to take these from 2 different things. One, if you're transferring him in, and one, if you're wildcarding him in. Now, if you don't have the exact money to make this move, and if he goes up 0.1 million, if he goes up another 0.1 next week and you can still afford him, there's no reason to transfer him in early, right? If he misses Game Week 8, he's no good to you. So forget about the 0.1 million, just don't transfer him in. I think that's pretty simple. Like, you should, where you can, I say this all the time, so does everyone else, you should be trying to wait until Friday or Saturday to make your transfers because then you've got all the info you're probably going to get. Sometimes there's early team news on a Saturday, but you don't always get it. Funnily enough, there probably will be for Liverpool this week, right? Because they're playing at 12:30, and the Liverpool team is one of those that tends to come out a bit early. But essentially, if you're transferring a player in this week and you're not wildcarding, just wait, right? Unless you're going to be priced out, there's no reason not to. If you're going to be priced out by this one price rise, you could think about going early. But if it's going to affect your team and you've got no bench, I just still wouldn't do it, right? You can figure it out in another game week. If you're wildcarding this week, that's a completely different conversation because you probably want him after this week. I think you should still put him in. I don't think the fixture run is amazing for Leeds after Southampton away. Wolves, Norwich, Leicester, Spurs and Brighton away. It's not that easy, but we know how good he is. And his numbers, his expected goal per 90 and his expected assists, right? They're high. And sometimes after a few game weeks, players can have high numbers and they start to tally off or go down as as the season goes on. But these numbers are very similar to last year where he did it over a whole season. Like, this is just a class player and people are seeing it now that he's playing for Brazil as well. So if I was on a wild card, I would bring him in whether he makes game week 8 or not, because if you're on a wild card, you should be at least having some bench players that you can play. Even Liveramento this week you could play instead. For those of you that are maybe going for like 4 big defenders like a Trent if he's fit, or maybe 2 Chelsea, 2 Man City, you can probably afford to bench Rafinha for 1 week and then have him back from game week 8. So although the fixture run's not amazing, I think he does just represent such good value. His numbers are just so good that you're going to want him in for 6.6 or 6.7 million. So if you're wildcarding, get him in my opinion, because if he misses game week 8, he's not going to miss the rest of the games. Although there is another international break, I think between 11 and 12, which is super annoying, but it is what it is. And if you're just transferring him in, you've got to wait. Just wait and see what's said in the press conference. And if he's ruled out for game week 8, you don't bring him in. If he's going to play or he's got a chance, you can get him in. Happy days. People really think I've got it in for Everton midfielders, right? But just hear me out a second. I think 266,000 transfers in for Townsend is quite a lot, right? And I think it's not... Value is important, but at some point you have to kind of weigh up what they're stopping you from doing, right? So I really think the 5.5 million-ish midfielder is probably enough. I think there's enough other good midfielders that we shouldn't be looking at having too many in our team. Now, his numbers are pretty good, right? 0.4 expected goal involvement is pretty decent. What I would say is that's his highest over the last 5 seasons of his numbers being recorded. So it was 0.29 at Palace, then 0.31, 0.16, 0.24. So he's got previous for having lower numbers. Now you could say Rafa Benitez has given him a new lease of life. He's playing week in, week out at Everton. He's playing really well. He's happy, etc. And they could be the reasons why the numbers have gone up. Or it could just be that he's on a bit of a streak right now and those numbers are going to come down a bit. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to start being bad value. But I do think someone like Mbeumo looks like better value. One of the reasons is the fixtures are better longer term. Obviously not this week because they've got Chelsea, Brentford. But after that, the fixtures do look a little bit better than Everton's. Like, Everton have got West Ham, Wolves away, Spurs at home, and Man City away in the next 5. Like, that Watford at home fixture looks really good. And look, Townsend might continue to be value, but I think he scored 3 goals. He's only had 5 shots in the box, which is fairly low. It's not necessarily a deal breaker because he's also creating a lot of chances as well. But I just wonder how many of these goals he can keep up. Like the one he scored the other day, which was outside of the box, brilliant goal, right? And by the way, I don't watch those goals and think that was difficult to score. He won't be able to do that again for a while. Obviously, you enjoy it. It's an amazing goal. But from an FPL point of view, how often can he replicate that? Probably not that often. So I feel like those numbers are going to drop down a bit. And Mbeumo, right, is exactly the same. His numbers are really high right now. I think it's like just look at it. I think it's like 0.62 expected goal involvement, which is crazy high. That's higher than his championship stats from last year. So the chances are he's not going to keep this up either, and his numbers are going to drop. But let's say his and Townsend's drop by the same amount. Mbeumo's still going to be ahead, right? And I just think he's playing up front. He's closer to goal. I just do think he's a better option. I'm not going to change my mind on that. It doesn't mean that I think Townsend is bad by any stretch, but I do think 266,000 transfers in for West Ham, Wolves and Spurs and Man City in the next 5 is just not a great transfer. I think he's had his time at the start of this season. I think he probably will keep ticking over, but I'm not sure he's going to keep ticking over at 6.14 points per game. So I feel like he maybe is someone where we've missed the boat on him. If he keeps those numbers up, 0.4 expected goal involvement, and he keeps playing week in, week out for Everton, which I don't see why he wouldn't with the way he's playing, then he could still be good value. I just personally think this is the wrong time to be buying him. If I had him, I would definitely keep. Home game against West Ham, home game against Watford, happy days. But after that, the fixtures aren't great. So to buy him right now, I do think there are better options for that price. And if I think about how I would kind of build a wildcard squad, I don't think I would have 2 £5.5 million midfielders. Like, to be fair, just to kind of get it out there, just to counteract or play devil's advocate for my own point, I mean, I do have Rafinha and Saka and Mbeumo. They're all cheap midfielders. So I guess if I've got a Saka for 6.3 and someone wants to buy Townsend for 5.6, it's not that much of a difference, really. So it probably is okay to have a couple more 5.5s. But I just think the ones I've got, Saka and Mbeumo and Rafinha, are all better. And I didn't ever really consider Townsend on my wildcard. Maybe that's to my detriment. Maybe I've written him off too early. I just don't think he's going to stick with this output. I think people might realise it over the next 5. But he could smash 2 or 3 goals against Watford, and I'm looking like an idiot. So make of that what you will. I think he's okay. I just think there's better options for around that price, and I think these fixtures are going to make it difficult for him and for Everton, to be honest. Marcelo Alonso, right? I haven't really changed my opinion on him either. I don't like to change my opinion too quickly. I want to see how things play out first before we make these kind of knee-jerk decisions. But last week I said it wasn't the right time to buy him. I felt like we'd missed the boat a little bit. Chilwell had played in the Champions League, and therefore Alonso just felt like a no-go area. And he didn't play, so that was the correct call. And I would still say that now. I don't think he's worth buying if you don't own him, right? And obviously he's been transferred out by 74,000 net managers, okay? So I don't think it's the right time to buy him, even for this lovely fixture run, because Chilwell is now a problem. But the question is it a good time to sell him? And I think that depends on who you are selling him for. If you're just going to like Chilwell, for example, then I don't know if over the next kind of 2 to 3 to 4 fixtures, we know that Chilwell's going to play them all and Alonso's going to play nothing. It just feels like you're just changing one issue for another one. If you're changing to someone like Rudiger, if he's available and Tuchel says he's fine, or Azpilicueta, or a Diaz, or someone that's like a safe pick that you know is going to play pretty much every single week, then that seems like a good sale to me. And again, a lot of these will probably be wildcard sales and going to a more safer defender. But if you're going for someone else who's also a little bit risky, and I'm not saying there's a problem with picking Chilwell, because if I had to kind of guess, I would say that he will now start the majority of matches for Chelsea. But Alonso hasn't had a bad season, right? We can say that in the last couple of games he's played poor, but this was against Juventus. This is against Man City. They are difficult matches. We knew Chilwell would come back at some point, but it's not a case that he's just not going to play any of the next 4 games. I would say there's a chance of him playing maybe 1, possibly 2 along the line. And it depends, obviously, which of those he goes for. The good thing is, if he doesn't play, you wouldn't really expect Chilwell to get subbed off. So if you've got a good bench, then that bench player will come on. So I guess the long and the short of it is, I don't have any issues with people selling him because I don't think he's a good buy right now. But if you're in a position with your team where maybe you've got a different priority transfer, or you've got a decent defender on the bench so that you can risk Alonso playing in one of the next 2 games, I don't think it's that bad of a shout to keep him, right? You don't have to force him out. If you're on a wild card, there's no point in keeping him, in my opinion. But if you're not on a wild card and you're just making a transfer, you could possibly make a case that if he starts against Brentford or if he starts against Norwich, that he has the capability of hauling in those games. We're talking clean sheet, we're talking assist. Like, he's the kind of player that could come away with a clean sheet, a goal, and an assist. Obviously, he'd pick up all the bonus points as well. There's nothing to say he couldn't do that over the next couple of games. There is obviously also the chance that Chilwell starts both of them and you're in an annoying position where you've kept him for 2 games, he's done nothing. I'm not pretending that risk isn't there. So yeah, that's it. I think you can sell him. I think that's fine. I think if you're from a wild card, you definitely sell him. But I also think you can make the decision to keep him. But you need a good bench. If you haven't got a good bench, start thinking of ways to get rid of him and start thinking of better players to bring in. Rudiger, Diaz, maybe even Cancelo is probably more nailed than Alonso, and they're probably going to offer more returns over the next kind of 3 to 4 fixtures. So yeah, if you want to get rid of him, fine. But there is a slight case to maybe keep him 1 or 2 more weeks. There we go. It's good to be back into the swing of making videos. I know it's only been like a couple of days, but it feels like forever when you're not making them. I've got a video every single day this week, right up until obviously the deadline. We'll have the deadline stream on Saturday as well, so please look forward to that. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these players. Are you buying them? Are you selling them? Do you disagree with what I've said? Do you agree with some of them? I know Townsend, for example, a lot of people don't like. I just don't think he's that great of a buy right now. But guess what? It's just my opinion. I can be wrong, and that is okay. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Obviously, check out Patreon if you haven't already. Big shout out to everyone that's already signed up and has been supporting over there. If you want to do that as well, there is a link in the description below. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow with team selection. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.